In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your products and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our news site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
Greetings, my esteemed audience. Thank you for joining the Community Organizer Show live from New York City. My name is Sheikh Musa Drammeh. I am your host. The executive producer behind the scene is Mutiu Olawuyi. Once again, thank you for joining our show every Sunday from 2 to 3 New York time. The Community Organizer Show is unique and suited for global community organizing elements. You know, we are mostly volunteers who work so hard to improve the quality of life in our localities and to encourage others to do likewise. That is why we thought that it is time to have a show dedicated to community organizers, which we believe perhaps is the first such show. With that being said, we're grateful for patronizing us. We're grateful for sharing our videos, and we're grateful for your loyalty to the show. Please, keep watching, keep following, and send us your input, that which you agree with and that which you disagree, and what you believe, will be improving the show, as we continue on. So today, the show is dedicated to our fellow African immigrants in New York. We are among the most blessed bunch who happen to be New Yorkers, because New York City has a budget of over $100 billion, $107 billion to be exact. That is bigger than a lot of countries in the world. One city with over $100 billion in GDP, in budget. Well, GDP, same thing. So for that reason, I wanted to dedicate today's show to guiding my fellow African immigrants as to how to participate in the allocation of funds so that they can continue to provide the much needed services, within their localities, within their communities. As we know, with this $107 billion in the city's budget, it's in the hands of the mayor and 51 city council members. If you divide that up, you're talking about $1 billion or $2 billion per city council member. That is a lot of money. and, to manage. And because New York City has 5 boroughs, again, the borough presidents as well also participate in the allocation of the funds, such as capital funding, to, deserving organizations in their respective counties. So all in all, these elected officials have the ability, to provide funding for organizations that, that are, that are qualified, to receive the funds and qualified to manage them and qualified to making sure that the funds are dispersed according to the purpose in which they receive them. So that is where the heart of my speech will be centered on how one qualifies to receive the funds and how one can properly manage the funds and how one can avoid the pitfalls that have befallen so many people and organizations in the past up to this date. So, to my fellow Africans in New York, as I said, we're the luckiest bunch living in a city with the budget that is greater than many, many, many countries in the world. Actually, bigger than a lot of countries combined. So for that, we have to understand the mechanism of budgeting. We have to understand how to set up organizations that qualify to get funding. And we also have to understand how to run these organizations so that when we get the funding will be used accordingly so that, everybody will be happy, elected officials will be happy, our customers will be happy, the recipients of our services will be happy, the mayor and everybody, because it's a chain linkage. If an organization fails, that failure has a long ramification of the chain. And therefore, elected officials usually are very hesitant to deal with new organizations without proven track record or without strong leadership background. Sometimes, you may have, individuals that have been doing great volunteer work and they, everybody, praise their work and, they provide much needed services on a volunteer basis. But the moment they receive funding, then, sometimes, new attitude comes in because some of these individuals may have never been, funded before. So they don't know how to handle, public funds accordingly. And sometimes they don't know how to do bookkeeping properly. Sometimes they don't know how to, manage allocations. So, through these, activities of ignorance, they put themselves in a very, very difficult dilemma. And that is why I said, let me help my brothers and sisters who are very active and who are very beneficial to our communities, to know what must be known and so that they can avoid what should be avoided. First, in order to get public funds, in most cases, organizations, number one, must be registered as non-profit organization. Registration is a state matter, not federal, but state matter. So every state has, different requirements for, organizational setting. However, once you, register your organization, you have the name, you provide the necessary information, and then you pay the required fees and you get your certificate of incorporation stamped and your certificate of registration returned to you. Then the next step is usually to apply for federal tax ID number so that you can get funds tax exempted, whether it is individual donors or allocation of funds from your municipalities or foundations or for whatever source that require exemption. So these exemptions may take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months to a year, depending on the complexity of your organization or the simplicity of it. So some may take even a month, just to get your approval. Some may take longer, but nonetheless, if you are to get funding or you to solicit funds, then you should apply for tax exemption, because not every donor would donate without having the tax exemption benefit, because there are a lot of donors that choose to support a cause, which is great, but they also need to be given the benefit of claiming their donation, from their tax filing. So therefore, you register your organization in the state that you're operating, in this case, in New York State, and then after you get your incorporation papers, then you register with the federal government to get your tax exemption EIN number. Now, when you are applying for EIN number, there is a requirement that that for your organization to have what they call purpose clause. Therefore, before you apply for EIN number, while you are applying for your incorporation, make sure that you added the purpose clause. The purpose clause identify the requirements of an existing as well as organizations that are about to go out of business for whatever reason. Because when you have this purpose clause, the purpose clause clearly states that your organization is a non-for-profit, doesn't belong to an individual, and therefore the assets is not owned are not owned by an individual or family, but rather it belongs to the public. So should your organization go out of business or cease to operate, then the assets accumulated for your organizations must be transferred to another organization for the benefit of the public, because you received these, you accumulated these assets, whether they are furnitures or funds or properties or real estate, whatever it is. Once you're no longer operating as you stated, then you must transfer these assets to an existing operating organizations to continue to benefit, the beneficiaries that your organizations were benefiting. You don't sell the assets and put the money in your pocket, or you don't have the assets inherited by your family or friends. No, that is not the reason why the organizations were given these funds. So that's why the purpose clause is very crucial when you're when you are incorporating your organization. And I hope that if you're about to form a nonprofit organization and you need help, get a lawyer. Get a lawyer. It's easy to form the organization, but get a lawyer, because the lawyer will be able to, construct it in a way that will be beneficial to you in a long term. Get a lawyer, or you get an accountant, CPA. There are a lot of people who can help you with it, but it is always better to deal with those who have expertise in a particular area. So you get your incorporation with the purpose clause, you apply for your tax exemption, and now you get it. Now you're ready. Before you solicit funds, again, you must register with the State Attorney General's office, a Bureau of Nonprofits, Bureau of Charities. In New York State, you must register with the Attorney General's Bureau of Charities. And then once you registered and then you approve, only then you are now fully qualified to solicit funds, whether they're individual funds, foundational funds, or government funds. It doesn't, whatever funds it is now, you are ready, because your organization is incorporated and your organization file and receive tax exemption from the federal government, IRS, and then your organization registered with the Attorney General, Charities Bureau. Now you are fully, functioning charitable organization. Now, charitable organization doesn't mean that all you do is charity. You can do other things that anything that non-profit organization permits you to do, you can do it. But because a lot of the things have to do with charities and giving and donation, that's why the registration with the Attorney General Charities Bureau is vital, because they don't want corrupt people to be soliciting charities for false pretense. They said they are who they are not, and they are raising funds for what they are not raising funds for. And to avoid that, then the members of the organization, the officials of the organization, the address of the organization, the tax ID number, and the exemption, valid exemption, everything must be submitted to the Charities Bureau for validation. Once they are validated and they check your background, and then you are given a green light to go. Now, let me get into where the African communities need help. Once you finish that, good and well, no problem. But once you are operating, then there are also a mechanism in which you avoid the pitfalls of deviating from everything that you have submitted. And a lot of people have done it. And that's why a lot of people have gone to jail. A lot of people have their organizations canceled and suspended and permanently barred for doing any type of business, with the state, because they have submitted, document, they have stated their purpose clause, they have received everything, and yet they operate, in accordance, not in accordance with that which they were given the authority to operate. Let me tell you some of those elements. For example, one of the most prominent one is, the inability to avoid conflict of interest. You see, conflicts of interest comes in when you found an organization, you find the name, you love everything. This is your baby. Now, you form the organization. It is yours. You have done everything. This is yours. But all of a sudden now, the government requires you to have an independent board of trustees, a watchdog, who will make sure that the purpose in which your organization was founded and funded and are operating out of is being, done correctly. That is their job. Their job is to making sure that you do what you said you were going to do. Because what you said you were going to do was the reason why, number one, you were approved. Number two, you were funded. Therefore, you cannot have an organization where you say, okay, I'm the founder, I'm the chairman, I'm the president, or whatever. And then your spouse is the treasurer and your son or daughter is the secretary. It's a family-run, non-profit organization. Everything is controlled by the family. That is a conflict of interest, because when the family runs it, the family decides the operation, the funding, the allocation, the expenses, the revenue, and everything. And when a family is in control, you cannot have a complete transparency. You cannot avoid it. And therefore, conflicts of interest is unavoidable. And the government do not want that. The government wants you to have executive committee. Now, you can have family members, not a problem, but the family members cannot decide the funding allocation, the hiring, and the expenses and everything. They cannot do it because you have to avoid conflicts of interest. So the board of trustee voted on certain things. The board of trustee must approve the hiring, the firing, the operation, the salary, and the expenses, and they must know that you are operating accordingly. And they must have complete access to your operation. They must have complete access to all the ins and outs. They must have complete access to all the contracts and everything. Otherwise, you cannot avoid conflicts of interest. That's one thing a lot of our nonprofits, you know, having problem with, because the founder believe that this is like for-profit enterprise. That I'm the founder, I'm the owner. I put everything. I even put my money, everything. Yes, you do that, but because nonprofit, nobody owns it. It belongs to the purpose in which it was created, and you agree to it. Therefore, it's not yours. Even though you're the founder, you name it, you finance it, you own the building, everything, but it belongs to the public. It belongs to the general public, in which the purpose clause stated clearly, and you agree to it. That's number one, conflict of interest. So, to avoid that, have an independent board of trustees, individuals that will make sure that no matter how you feel, they want to make sure that the organization operates accordingly. The funds are being dispersed accordingly. The hiring is being done accordingly, and the salaries are being paid accordingly. The contracts are being signed accordingly. That's their job, making sure that this organization is operating according to how the funds were, allocated to it. Number one. Number two, also, a lot of us have difficulties maintaining proper financial record, maintaining operational record, maintaining minutes, maintaining, all the contracts and documentation. This is where a lot of good people doing great things do not, steal or misappropriate, but unfortunately they have difficulties with accounting, with record keeping. And this is where a lot of people, including house of worship, fall victim to. They get the funding, they spend the funds accordingly, but they fail to maintain proper recording, proper financial, management, proper upkeeping. And that will cause them not only, to be sanctioned, but they may even ask them to return the funds. Even they spend the funds accordingly, but because the documentation does not support it, sometimes they may require them, to reimburse, the funds back to where they got it from. So my brothers and sisters, financial record and record keeping and making sure that you have proper documentation for every penny. Even if you give money to your own nonprofit, everything must be documented. And every meeting must have minutes, and the minutes must be properly put together and properly labeled and properly put in a place that is accessible. Otherwise, you may be doing the right thing, but because you have a wrong method or you are negligent of record keeping, you have problems. And a lot of people have problems. That's number two, record keeping. Make sure, hire a record keeping organization or individual, somebody who's good at record keeping, making sure that every aspect of it, is being properly documented and the documents are properly kept and in an accessible, place where when, those who need to get access to them can easily get access to them. That's number two. So the number one is conflicts of interest. Number two is the record keeping. Now, number three. Number three comes to greed. Greed, greed, greed. Human nature. A lot of times, human beings, as I said earlier, you may have great people doing great things without money, but the moment money comes in, imagine an organization that never had any money. All of a sudden, you give $100,000 this year. Next year, they give you $1 million. Then greed, greed, greed trickle in. Well, you were making $40,000 a year. Now that you have this $1 million, then you deserve, you're entitled to make what the CEOs on Wall Street are making. They're making $500,000. Why not? Let me make $200,000, and greed. And now to do that, I'm also gonna, bringing my children, my friends. And before you know, greed put you in a very, very bad situation. And a lot of people, again, go to jail because of this greediness. They were altruistic in the beginning, but now money comes in and the money reveals the true character. And a lot of people have problems. That's why, again, elected officials are hesitant to deal with newcomers without track record. So greed, avoid it, avoid it, avoid it. Be true to the mission and do the right thing. And the salary can be determined by independent board, not boards consisting of your friends and family members, who will, gin up your excuses, but an independent board. Make sure that you do not put a salary that was not approved legally, independently. If you do it, you may get away with it 1, 2, 3, but sooner or later it'll catch up. And the government has a long hand, and the government don't forget, and they can be very merciless, to crooks and greeds and those who are corrupt. Don't do it. Now, the fourth thing is this: opportunity. Again, you have organizations where people, their funds, they have great, proposal writer, grant writer. The proposal writing is, impeccable. They're getting funds from this, from that, from that. Now they have, revenue streams from different, the different areas, and they're thriving, they're expanding. And the opportunity, the bank, there are a lot of money in the bank. Sometimes you may even have more money than you can, spend, in the year, whatever. And then opportunity, which is part of the greed, kicks in. Either stolen money or fraudulently deposit this money to wrong accounts or fraudulently transfer this money to private accounts, whatever. The opportunity, pulls these individuals to do corrupt things. Again, sooner or later, the government will catch up because, dishonesty does not pay. And again, a lot of people end up going to jail because the opportunity was so overwhelming that they were trying to take advantage of it. But, illegal is illegal, dishonest is dishonest, corrupt is corrupt, and misappropriation of funds is misappropriation of funds. You don't do it. When you set up an organization, congratulations. When you're serving humanity, congratulations. Do not let money corrupt you. Do not let opportunity deceive you. Do not let instant gratification, destroy your future. Do not let what other people can help you to achieve corruptly, terminate, every single contract you have. We've seen it all the time. And people who earn over $100,000 but was stealing $1,000 and end up losing it all. But not only losing it, but you lose your reputation, man. I mean, the most important thing is that the money is your dignity, your honor. And guess who are the victims, the people that would have been served by your organization and the served, but now they no longer, being served, and they become very distrusting of anybody else. And the people that were financing become so disappointed, and as well so distrusting of others, because you have shown good profile, good character, good track record, and then you have articulated superbly, the services that were needed, and you received funding, and all of a sudden greed and opportunity and everything, unfortunately put you in a bad situation. We've seen it so many times, my brothers and sisters. I've seen it so many times in New York City, where people go to jail. Even some elected officials that have indirect interest in operation, whatever, they also go to jail because the government has long hands, and the government will give you $10,000 funding, and the government will allocate $20,000 to making sure that the funds are protected, because the funds are taxpayers' money. The government doesn't have money; it's the taxpayers. So they don't want you to rob your fellow, taxpayers, your neighbors. They want you to use it prudently to improve the quality of life, whatever it is, education, it is, whatever it is. They want you to do it superbly so that everybody benefits. But when you have corrupt elements within the system, it destroys the whole system. And that we don't want. That's why I wanted to, spend this time to really highlight this, because there are a lot of Africans. Let's take, for example, the recent upsurge of migrants. We have a lot of African organizations, that have been volunteering for so long, providing a lot of services, but that does not make do not make them qualify, to receive public funds. Because if you look at their organizations, so maybe they don't meet, the definition that will qualify them. Independent board, 501c3, proper accounting, and then you have, competent, qualified staff and everything. It's one thing to provide voluntary services as a volunteer, but it's another thing to provide professional services as a contracted agent or agency. Completely different. Translation, for example, you may speak a language you fluently, and you may assist, people with that language, but are you professionally competent to translate documents, medical documents, legal documents, and others, immigration documents? So there's a difference between volunteering altruistically and rendering competent, professional, and contractual services. So therefore, a lot of times, my advice is that, do not put yourself in a situation where you may get a little bit of funding that will hurt you later. Because if they give you $5,000-$10,000 and you don't have proper setting, you will regret it later. So, I want to these four elements are extremely important for anyone who who wants to do the right thing in their community. Incorporation, 501c3, and registration with the Attorney General, and the avoidance of conflicts of interest, avoiding greedy, and don't let opportunity deceive you. You may have access to the funds, you may have access to the checks, you may have access to a lot of things, but don't let them put you in a situation where you will be regretful for taking corrupt opportunity out of public funds. Don't do it. Not even public, private. Don't do it. Running a non-profit organization is a noble endeavor. Providing services to your communities is a noble endeavor. But do it with noble heart, noble intent, noble mind, and noble character. You cannot advertise one thing and then privately do other things. You cannot set up a non-profit that belongs to the public and put all your family members and friends around it so that you are protected for corrupt, elements, corrupt activity. Don't do it. Don't do it. Now, especially if you're a religious person, you should never ever take anything that doesn't belong to you. Never ever. Even if you have the opportunity, don't do it. Never ever. Because we believe firmly that whatever we take, we will be accountable for. Whatever we take illegally or corruptly or under false pretense, it will hurt us deeply. Never failed. Never ever failed. Therefore, even if there's an opportunity to do things wrong, don't do it. Fear God, whether you are being seen or whether you are in private. Fear God. Always fear God in your actions and your relationships. Opportunity should not corrupt you unless you were corrupted waiting for the opportunity. But if you're not corrupted, then opportunity should not corrupt you. That's all my advice. And if you do that, then you have every right to apply for this funding. $107 billion New York City budget, $237 billion New York State budget. We do deserve to be funded. We are entitled to be funded, but we have to be ready, and we have to have complete organizational structure, and we have to have all the elements that will protect the taxpayers' funds from being misappropriated or dealing with corrupt people, and make sure that every person that serves in your organization has a noble character, good background. Otherwise, one person with access and opportunity can destroy a reputable organization or can eliminate your organization, period, or even put you into trouble. So let us do the right thing. Once we're able to do the right thing, then let us demand what we're entitled to, which is organizational funding, so that we can serve our people, our communities, so that we can improve the quality of life, because taxpayers, pay their taxes for the betterment of their communities. And these communities, who are the best to make them better than, people like you and I and others who have been setting up all these wonderful nonprofits, hospitals and medical clinics, and so many wonderful organizations that have been set up to provide wonderful services by great people. But don't be among those whose greed and opportunity destroy you, and in the process destroy other people's opportunities. Let us be noble people no matter what. Let money never ever change us. And if we are not noble people, don't get into a noble profession. Don't do it. Do not do it, because this is so, critical, that it should only draw good people that will continue to elevate, the status of, non-profit service, which is the noblest of the noblest. So I hope that, these elements that I highlighted will be helpful to you and others, because they are very, very vital for your existence and your success. And ignoring them will put you in a deep, deep trouble that you will regret sooner or later. And God bless you all, and may God continue to bless our nonprofit, community, and may God continue to bless the tax-paying New Yorkers for their generosity and hard work and sacrifice. And thank you. Continue to support our show. Continue to watch our show, and continue to share our videos with others, because our goal here is to empower our people, empower our audience, because every information we provide, we deem to be very, very vital, for the success of our audience. Thank you, and see you next week.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted, and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your products and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our news site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.